So today we're starting the second chapter of Sefer Yetzira, and the structure of Sefer Yetzira really has two parts. The book begins with the 32 pathways of wisdom, in which, wow, beautiful sweater, thank you. In which are composed, 32 is the gematria of Lev, of the heart, and 32 is the 10 sfirot, which was the topic of the first chapter. And we've mentioned that there's a connection between the 10 sfirot and in Hebrew, mispar, numbers, the sfirot giving us multiplicity in the world. And then the rest of Sefer Yetzira deal with the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And in this we have a very fundamental conception of the world, of the connection between language and life, language and the world. We see language as, we see language as not only depicting reality, but in the Jewish view, language actually creates a reality. I think a lot of modern theories of postmodernism and of interpretation see there's something active in language and words and not just some passive depiction of a reality. And this is true with human speech, but even more so with divine speech. In fact, these chapters of Sefer Yetzira are the source, the commentaries of them are the source of that, all the legends of the Jewish golem. The golem is and creating a golem is a human attempt to create life, to get close to God by being like God, and use of language in the creating of the golem to create that life, that spirit that animates the golem. Also is connected to theories of language that develop through Sefer Yetzira. In some ways, I feel that the movement between the first chapter and the other chapters, the sfirot deal with something more abstract, something much more above, whereas the letters are much more tangible, deal with life and the world itself. In some ways, it's masculine, feminine, at least in a Kabbalistic sense, of seeing that the masculine as the spirit and the feminine as much more as earth, Mother Earth, and perhaps why the women do better on their SATs at least they used to, in the language part, and the men on the math part. Being as it may, we'll start the first Mishnah. The first Mishnah, the title is 22 Otiyot Yesod, 22 letters of Yesod, of foundation. And in many ways, this is similar to the periodic table. We know that everything in reality, in the physical world, is based on different ways. Chemistry teaches us about taking different atoms and creating different combinations between them, and anything there is just different combinations of those same atoms that are in the periodic table are described from the atom with one proton, is it, and then going on to now in Hebrew, the view here of language is very similar. Just the building blocks of reality are the atoms, and we have the periodic table. And Sefer Yetzira sees the building block of life is about language, and language itself has their atoms. If the words are like molecules of the atoms coming together, the atoms themselves are the 22 letters of the alphabet. Okay, so in this sense, it's the 22 letters of Yesod, of foundation, or the foundations of all that is. Now, there's a wordplay that exists in Hebrew that connects the last Mishnah with this Mishnah. Here we have the phrase Yesod. Yesod is foundation. The last Mishnah spoke about Sod. The last Mishnah said there's a Sod, a mystery, a secret. The mystery and the secret has to do about Emish, the three letters Aleph, Mem, Shin. that are it is the mystery which forms the foundation of the name of God that we spoke about last time. Now here, instead of using the word sod, we use the word yisod. The word so sod and yisod, the mystery and a foundation, are very close words in Hebrew. And this gets back to a major concept that we'll see later in this chapter, seeing that the tangible world, its stands, its existence, its significance is built upon the non-tangible. Similarly to the verse in Eov that we've spoken about before, that says, Tole Eretz al Blima, that Eretz, the world, is hanging on Blima, on nothingness. So too a view that the world exists because its foundation is something which is the non-tangible being greater and more significant than that which is defined. In the introduction to the Idra Rabbah, which in many ways is the heart of the Zohar, there's a statement: the world exists on sod, on the mystery, and here again, you stand on the mystery and you stand on the foundation. So the foundation and the mystery, they both go together. In the later Kabbalah, there's even what's interesting is that there are connections between the different sfirot and different parts of the body. And the yisod, the foundation, is the reproductive organ, because in many ways this is a yisod, this is a foundation. Life stems from the yisod, from the reproductive organ. And here too we find that this is also connected to mystery. The reason why people wear clothing is to covering their private parts, is because there's an aspect of mystery and secret relating to all aspects of different sexuality. So secret, mystery, and foundation very much go together. Okay, now the 22 letters are broken up into 3 categories, which respectively will be chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5. This chapter, chapter 2, has some general discussion about the letters. The first is the Shalosh Imaot, 3 letters that are the mothers. Again, going back to what I said about the feminine aspect of language, it's the language gives birth to things, and these are 3 letters that we see all of language and all that is really evolving from these 3 primeval letters. And these letters are the 3 mothers and not 3 fathers. Sheva Kafulot, we'll see what those are later. It's the 7 letters in the Hebrew that can be said with and without a dagesh, a hard version and a soft version, which would be Beged Kefret. In modern Hebrew we talk about Beged Kefet, which is 6 letters, but in ancient time, the resh itself, there are 2 ways to say the resh. And
the mothers are emesh?
The what?
The mothers
yes,
are emesh.
yes. Mem domemet. Sorry. V'shtemesre pshutot, and 12 regular letters that don't have either of these 2 particular qualities. Okay, and now the continuation of this Mishnah will take at least all the time we have today, because it's really that significant. Shalosh imaot emesh. The 3 mothers are the letters Aleph, Mem, Shin. The 3 primeval letters. In fact, in Sefer Breshit, Emesh is mentioned almost as a name of God. And these 3 letters, what are these 3 letters? It is the Mem Domemet, Shin Shoreket, Aleph Avir Ruach Machriya Bentayim. There is a dialectic between these 2 letters. We've mentioned in the past that the Yerushalmi explains that the word Emet, truth, is based on a deep conception of truth. Emet starts with Aleph, which is the beginning of the alphabet. continues with Mem, which is the middle of the alphabet, and finishes with Taf, which is the end of the alphabet. Emet, truth, is something which encompasses everything. Here too, Emesh is very similar to Emet. It has the Aleph, the Mem, just instead of the Taf, it has a Shin. It's also something very all-encompassing. And we even see that there is these are the foundations of, we have the Zechut and the Chovah, the merit and the guilt, the positive and the negative. And then we have that Lashon Chak, the tongue, which is Machriya Bintayim. The basic structure within the Kabbalah in general, and in many ways reality, and it's something which I find incredibly fundamental of how to experience, look at reality, is the structure of the three. We have two opposites, the Zechut and the Chovah, and then there, after the two, we have this the middle path that tries somehow to incorporate them together. We've seen this many times. We know that we spoke about fire and water. Fire is a major principle, and we'll see fire is connected, of course, to the Shin. Water and fire are opposites. But Shalom, peace, is when we link together the fire and the water. We take the two opposites and we manage to connect them and incorporate them. This is the basic dialectic of the Kabbalah. It is often called left, right, and the middle line. Often in pictures depicting the world of the Sfirot, we have the left, right, and center, and it's endless amount of aspects. It could be the masculine, the feminine, and the connection between them. We said fire and water and the connection. It could be chesed and din, mercy and kindness and harsh justice, and their connection. So it's always the two opposites, and then the ability to forge and incorporate these two opposites. We're now dealing with parshiot relating to the figure of Yaakov Avinu. In the Kabbalistic view, Yaakov Avinu is really an expression of this dynamic. Avraham is chesed, like as here as zechut. Yitzchak is din, the generosity, the giving of Yaakov, of Avraham. Yitzchak being a very different, opposite personality. Yaakov is seen as someone who incorporates both of them, and Yaakov is considered to be the man of truth, of emet. And sometimes people are very cynical about this, because they say, wait a second, Yaakov, he's cheating, he's lying, he's doing all sorts of things. Maybe he has to do what he has to do, but why call him a person of truth, a person of tamimut, which could be innocence or wholeness, a person of peace, as shows up in other sources? But the answer is because the fullness of reality is incorporating all sides together. We have Avraham is one side of reality. Yitzchak is an opposing. It's because Yaakov is such a complex personality that he could be the person of truth, of shalom, and of tmimut. The Zohar brings a pasuk in Tilim that says that if somebody, when you encounter a person who is a chassid, treat him with chesed. If you encounter a person who is tamim, treat him with tmimut. But if you encounter a person who is crooked, deal with him crookedly. In other words, it's saying that to really experience reality, to be a full, whole, real person, you have to know how to relate to every person in the right way. If you're nasty to everybody, that's one way to do it. But even being nice to everybody is also not necessarily the path of truth. Because sometimes, especially if you're representing other people, you're representing a whole nation, you're representing a family in the future, being soft and nice and generous in every encounter is not the true, authentic way to do it. So Yaakov knew who to deal with, straight and who to deal with crooked, and that's what makes him ish emet. So the truth, the emet, the shalom, the peace, the tmimut, it's all about having a full response to reality, which goes back to the emesh, to the, one second, the kaf zechut would be the hand of saying merit, of kaf chova, the hand of finding guilty. These are words taken from the concept of justice. I'll say a few more words, then we'll stop. And this is the basic structure. This is how we should look at reality. There are two fundamental images here. One image is that of justice. The symbol of justice throughout the world is a scale, because we try to get truth by scaling the two sides. And we have that middle point, which shows that we've achieved equilibrium between the two sides. This is exactly what's being said here. We have the hand of a kaf could be we have the two sides, and then we have that which is in between, which the sides between them. So one image is that of justice. In fact, this is why in the Jewish Beis Din there are 3 dayanim, because 3 dayanim, the Gemara says, helps us get to the truth. Because when you have 3 people in a discussion, we'll have one person will even try to actively be the devil's advocate, the other one will have the other approach, and the third one will be able to try to incorporate the vantage points of the other two. So a bedin, a court, is 3 judges. But this statement also takes back to the discussion of the Sefirot in the first chapter. We saw in the first chapter we always had the structure of 3 also. We saw that, we spoke about a human body. We said the human body has the left side and has the right side. We said the 10 Sefirot parallel the 10 fingers. And as we saw, there are really 2 groups, 5 paralleling 5. This is the kaf zechut and kaf chova. And then we have the tongue between them. Right? We spoke about, we have our brit. Our unity is our center line, and we have the brit of speech, which is connected. So here too we find that this structure of left, right, and center is very fundamental in the human body, in justice, in the realm of the divine. Wherever we go, we see this structure. In some ways, we could see this as being expressed in Hegel: thesis, antithesis, and finally synthesis. But these ideas are very ancient in Jewish thought, of seeing this as a way to really encompass the richness of a reality. Okay, maybe one last point, and then we'll take some responses, is Aleph Mem Shin. It also could stand for, Aleph stand for Emet, truth, Mem, Mishpat, Shin, Shalom, for peace. That another triad. In Pirkei Avot, we say that at the end, we say the world stands on these values. So it's really the knowing how to incorporate truth, justice, and peace together, and this also is reflective of the Emesh. I mentioned about
the pasuk, Emet u'mishpat shalom, shiftu b'sharachem.
Emet, right. That's the verse brought down in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. So we know, and I mentioned to you, I think, about hand clapping, that Rabbi Menachem Fruman would always say, what is peace? What is shalom? Clapping your hands together. You clap your hands together, you take the left, you take the right, and you bring them together. And so there is a possibility, there's left and there's right, but there's a possibility of shalom is when we link together the left and the right. Okay, and you wanted to respond?
Yeah, you said the whole dealing with crooked people, crooked.
Mm-hmm.
There's the famous saying, misery loves company.
Okay.
And if you deal with crooked people crookedly and you deal with miserable people, I guess miserably, you're going down to their level, and you're kind of straying from your true self to go down to their level, and they're kind of winning.
You know, so let me tell you a story. Right. It's not saying that everything goes, but saying that there are necessary situations that you have to do something which might not be in a ivory towers, in a idyllic world, utopian world, that you would not have to do. So, my wife's grandfather was a very well-known philosopher, and they used to say that Nescafe, it's called Nescafe because in Hebrew Nes means miracle, that it was a miracle that he was able to make coffee all by himself because he was so spiritual and so a scholar, lofty with many ideals. Now, his wife was as unintellectual and practical as you can imagine. And one day they're going to the, this is before the state of Israel, and they're going, sometime in the 30s, they're going to the Arab shuk to buy something. And they go into the store, and they ask something, so his wife says, and how much is this? So he says, well, this is 100 lirot. So on the spot, Michal's grandma says, I'll give you 10. And the grandfather was horrified. He said, Tony, the gentleman said 100. He was shocked out of his mind. What's my wife doing? So then the seller said, the seller, not his wife, said to him, sir, please stand outside. I'm going to settle this with your wife. And so sometimes part of the reality is to know the situation, how to really deal with it in the way. Sometimes it's not, that's a cute story because really both sides understood that there's some sort of game you have to play. Sometimes there's real conflict. But in situations of conflict, if somebody's trying to cheat you, to say, I'm not going to sully my hands by doing anything, that would not be, so that would be a failing. That would be sticking to some sort of, that would be not responding to reality. So of course, it's not saying that anything goes. If they're crooked, do anything you want to them, but it's saying that there are situations that you have to use the methods of selling the message to the other person. Okay? Okay, so now we will continue in this very Shem Mishnah. I mentioned before about the parallel between the letters, the periodic table of atoms that together form molecules, and the letters that together form words. There are actually some very nice examples of how that works within Hebrew and the parallels between Hebrew and the atoms themselves. I've heard, I think Rav Ashkenazi pointed this out, that the Hebrew word for water, of course, is mayim, mem, yud, mem, and this looks very similar to the molecule for mayim, water, which we summarize as H2O, but if you look at a picture, it would be hydrogen, the oxygen, and then hydrogen. So somehow you feel that structure of the three atoms in which the first and the third repeat themselves, seeing the mayim and the water as going together.
There's no significance. That's just a cute thing.
So
they didn't know that.
Well, depending who created language, I don't know. Right. So part of the mystery is what's a cute coincidence and what is some reflection of something deeper. I think, for example, one thing. But let's go at something deeper. There's something very harmonious in water. There's something very not harmonious, chaffing away in fire. So, and look at the words themselves. Whether water or fire, you feel the words themselves reflect at least the external realities, as what we'll see now is in Hebrew. The Sefer Yetzira gives significance to the sound of the letters and not only the letters itself. It says mem shlosh otiyot emesh, mem domemet. The mem is domemet, and shin shoreket. The mem is domemet. Suddenly we're telling us that there's significance to the sound of the mem. What's the sound of the mem? Very harmony. Shin is shoreket. Shh. Shh. The sounds themselves are reflective of something of the reality. Meaning, I don't know about the molecules or whatnot. It would have to be something divine for.
But
But to realize that language does have a connection to the physical reality, that the letter shin looks like fires going up the hands, the mem is something much more circular, harmonious, and the sounds are reflective, so there is a connection between language and that which it depicts. But there's something really incredible about this statement over here, and here in the commentary of the rabbi to Sefer Yetzira reveals what he sees to as a major mystery and secret. The rabbi writes that to call the sound of the mem a mem domemet is the choice of that particular word very much reminds us of a word in Hebrew that has a lot of significance. Domemet comes words of damama. Often domem is considered something which is silence. But when we say that in the story of Eliyahu Navi, that God reveals himself to Eliyahu Navi, okay, want to sit closer? Okay. God reveals himself to Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu hears kol damama daka. First he experiences something like fire, like water, like wind,
and God is not there.
And God is not there. But what did he ultimately? His experience of God is in the kol damama daka, which would be translated possibly as the sounds of silence, because domem is usually silence. But clearly, Sefer Yetzira, if it's the sound of silence, there must be some sort of a sound. And now Sefer Yetzira calling the sound of the mem, to hum the mem, calling that domemet. The rabbi says this is letting us in on a mystery and secret, that what Eliyahu Navi heard was a sound very similar to that sound of the syllable, that harmonious syllable of the mem. Now on this, Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan has an incredible insight, that we know that in Eastern spirituality, the sound that represents the unity of existence, that in which classes in yoga, for example, yoga meaning that all is one, will conclude with this sound, is that of the Om. Om. And here we find that the sound that Eliyahu hears when there's divine revelation, the sound that Sefer Yetzira tries to teach us is, according to Sefer Yetzira, is extraordinarily similar to that sound of the Om. But as I've written extensively, we shouldn't necessarily start sitting in ashram saying Om, but realizing that Judaism has Om, but it's not enough for us. If we see that the wholeness, the Shalom, the complete, is forging water and fire together, so what we need is not Om, which represents the water, but we have to link the fire to that. And that's why in Judaism, what we believe in is in Shalom. Okay? So I once had a teacher who would teach, when he would teach yoga, he would end his classes not with Om, but with Shalom. Now, in English, you could even see how the spelling in English, you actually see that the Shalom ends with O-M, with that sound of the Om itself. Okay, so Judaism sees the power of Om as an expression of unity and harmony, but the fullness of existence is not only finding the unity and harmony from one vantage point of the water, but seeing an ability to create something that incorporates not only the water but also the fire. Okay, this is very fundamental. For example, I spent time in Rishikesh, in the Shivyananda ashram, and and one aspect they have there is that they're very, first of all, I found them to be very, very humble people. I was very, very positively impressed, because often in the West, a lot of different gurus have been very corrupt. In fact, even the Beatles guru from Rishikesh, also they were disillusioned with him later. The people I met were very humble, very much balei midot.
What was it?
In Rishikesh, the ship. It's a town in.
No, but where did you visit?
I was at, among other places, the Shivyananda ashram. But one aspect of life is that it's very ascetic, meaning dualities of male-female, where Judaism sees marriage not only as something which is a positive, but something which is an expression of the holy. Having men, women together is creating a wholeness, a oneness, which is reflective of the realm of the divine, and connections of the physical and the spiritual as being they were very ascetic. But so here again, I feel it goes back to focusing on the Om, one vantage point, but seeing that we're into connecting things: the male, the female, the spirit and the body, the fire and the water, the mem and the shin. Okay, so this is our first Mishnah of the second parak. So maybe I'll talk a little bit more about this before we start even a second Mishnah, which would be yet another adventure. In fact, I remember the day that I started realizing that this Torah really came into the world. To say we're at least for me, I was once in Pesach. There used to be this sort of a festival, something like a Jewish Woodstock, held during Pesach. Anything Woodstock, especially the negatives, were all there. The festival was based on some sort of a Hindu holiday. Tens of thousands of Israelis would spend their Pesach at the Bumba Mela, and when I was there, I was invited there. I give a shiur. So I thought at first to give a shiur, I talked about the similarities between the Om and the Shalom. But I said, but I'm coming there to get our holy brothers and sisters to come home, to tell them Om Shalom. Instead of bringing them home, maybe I'll convince them that hey, there's the rabbi says that Om is where it's at. So I said, on one hand, I don't want to come out against anything, and I do see that there are positive things everywhere, but somehow I have to give a message that will go beyond that. And there, late at night, on the sands, the Bumba Mela, on the beach near the Nitzanim beach, I came up to this realization about the relationship between the Om and Shalom being the fire and water, and looking at and that's what Judaism is looking for. So that was, and a follow-up story. My book that I deal a lot with these topics. When it came out, I was invited by the community of Alon to be with them for Shabbos. And Friday night we had an Onik Shabbos together, and I'm telling stories from the Bumba Mela. And I see someone there with a long beard, long payas, and he's very deeply moved. And he said, I was the producer of the Bumba Mela. I'm the person who put it out every year. And since then, he found his way back to Abaita. Okay, so today we've learned about language, about Om, about Shalom, about the periodic table, about the language periodic table, about the connection between Yesod and Sod, the mystery and the foundations. I think this is quite enough for one day. Sof davar, hakol nishma, et Elohim yira, ve'et mitzvotav shmor, ki ze kol ha'adam Be'ezrat Hashem next week.